Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the New Standard on December 21st, 2022. And as always, I have my partner in crime to my left, Neil Coulon. What's up, Big Neil?
It's a dark day, Lance. As we found out, and I'm sure everyone by now is aware, Steelers legendary running back, former NFL career rushing leader, the reception part of the Immaculate Reception, Hall of Fame member, and soon to be Jersey retired Franco Harris has passed away at the age of 72. His son confirmed with the Associated Press early Wednesday morning of his passing. No details on the cause of death have been released, but it's a shocking story to find out about early in the morning, just 3 days away from when the Steelers were and still are planning to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. Perhaps, as we talked about off the air, Lance, the most iconic play in NFL history, maybe in sports history. On top of that, as Steelers coach Mike Tomlin said yesterday in great detail, he didn't know Franco the player, but he knew very well Franco the man. The dedication that he had to the city of Pittsburgh was unparalleled. And to echo those sentiments, the real sad thing here, Lance, in my mind, is the fact that Franco, unlike perhaps any other Steelers legend, really connects one generation to the next. I'm a pre-Steel Curtain Steelers fan. I was born at the very end of it. My Steelers are Ben Steelers for the most part, kind of starting in the Kevin Green era, moving forward. But I was put to bed at night by stories of Franco Harris. You heard the legendary accolades that he had on the field. We all knew growing up that Franco was in a place of reverence, and every other running back, and we're seeing a lot of this in social media right now, every other running back who had success in Pittsburgh has paid homage at some point or other to Franco Harris. There are comments from Jerome Bettis, who legitimately seems heartbroken over the whole thing. I've seen Willie Parker chime in. Pat Freiermuth, interestingly enough, not a running back, but Franco announced the Freiermuth selection in the draft 3 years ago or 2 years ago when Freiermuth was taken in the second round. He touched every player who came through that locker room, and he touched every fan in some way or other. I have had the opportunity to interview Franco a couple times. To the degree that I can speak to him as a man, I can say this: everything we see of Franco really is who he was. That's hard to say. You always got a sense with Franco that he is completely genuine. He's completely sincere, and he knew he had a strong place of legacy within one of the most storied franchises in the NFL because he's one of the founding fathers of it. As we know full well, the Steelers were garbage before Franco arrived. And while Franco was not the only reason why they turned it around, he was a huge part of one of the biggest turnarounds we'll ever see in the history of professional sports. The Steelers fairly, from 1933 through 1969, you could equate to probably a worse level than what we've seen of the Cleveland Browns since that franchise came back in 1999. They were a complete and total dumpster fire. This podcast wouldn't exist back, and obviously it doesn't exist back then, but if we did this show back then, Lance, we would have maybe 2% of the audience. We probably wouldn't care as much. Franco and many others that came with him, but perhaps none greater than Franco, maybe some at his level, but none greater than Franco, turned all of that around. That achievement goes beyond statistics. It goes beyond placement in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which he got in on the first ballot, rightfully so, in 1990. He is a legend in that regard, and it's terrible to see. there's a lot of history that goes with it. You know, my old man was a huge Franco Harris fan. He died 5 years ago. It brings a lot of stuff back, and it's really sad to see, especially short of a day that should have honored him while he was alive. Unfortunately, Franco Harris has passed away, age 72. Rest in peace, Franco. Thanks for what you did.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to that other than, um, being in Pittsburgh and living in Pittsburgh and being born in Pittsburgh, and being born at the start of the curtain, being born in 1970 at the start of the run. Um, Franco was part of the fabric of the city, living in Mexican War streets. Definitely, I mean, Franco was the man of the people, the general of Franco's Italian army, and it's just incredibly sad to get the news this morning that Franco Harris passed away. Franco will always be a legend, and as we were saying off air, the statue of Franco Harris, seeing Franco Harris when you come into Pittsburgh, um, catching the ball on the immaculate reception, will mean something a little bit more when you go into Pittsburgh. And that's just, when you were talking about Franco being a legend, that's just the weight of the play. That when you enter the city, you entered the city to the statue of Franco Harris catching the ball for the immaculate reception. I
Franco
mean that
Harris next to George Washington, if that
yes,
tells you what Franco means in Pittsburgh, and that's I don't think that's an accident either. I it,
no,
it, it's sorry, just to dovetail off your point. One of my favorite traditions in Steelers fandom is you see the out of town fans flock in Saturday before a game, and there are dozens upon dozens of pictures of the people that just came to town that get their picture taken next to that statue. I've had my picture taken next to that statue probably a dozen times. It's annoying for the locals. I get it. I've walked past it, but most of the time, when you walk, off the tram, up or going to the tram, up or down the escalator, you will see people sitting next to that statue and taking pictures. He ushered you into Pittsburgh. He bid you farewell when you left. He's an icon to the level of which it's hard for anybody in any city anywhere um, to fully understand, to fully embrace. And he was playing next to Mean Joe Green, Terry Bradshaw, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham, Lynn Swan. Franco's the guy with the statue, or at least in the airport. That play is so far above and beyond anything else that you can tie to a professional team and the athletes that play for them. It's just an incredible legacy. You can't put into words how big of a legacy that is. It's just unbelievable.
yeah, it's I mean, hey, I'm from Pittsburgh. We're from Pittsburgh. I take a picture with the statue every time I come to Pittsburgh. I mean, it's just, every time, I come to Pittsburgh, I take a picture with Franco's statue. My wife couldn't believe it. She was just like, wow, there is a statue of him catching the football when you come to Pittsburgh. She could not believe just what that play meant to the city, what it means to the NFL, and what it means to the history of sports in the United States of America. It's one of those plays. It's one of those moments that, if you're a sports fan, even if you're not a sports fan, almost everybody has heard of and they know. But again, rest in peace, Franco Harris. Incredible man, incredible player, and an incredible legend. Again, Franco is going to be making that immaculate reception with the man upstairs. And, again, Franco, wow, it's incredible. The timing is very ironic, but hey, it is what it is. It's perfect timing. And RIP again to Franco Harris. But with that, we're going to move forward and break down the game. As always, if you want to participate in the show, go to YouTube and do a search for the New Standard and Lance Williams or Neil Coulong. Also, if you want to catch the show via a podcast, go to a local podcast feeder or to your podcast feeder. I always say local podcast feeder and do a search for the New Standard. It's not as if podcasts are local, podcasts are global, international.
You can make it
Um,
local in a way. Go to
yeah,
the
but
one. Think of local as go to the one that you like, that you're comfortable with,
yes,
that's
yes,
easiest for you to get to. That sounds local.
yes, that's local. Yes, absolutely, that's local. And mine was ironically it was Pepe's, sort of near Mexican War Street. Um, and that's where I got my local sandwich of choice in Pittsburgh. Again, sad day, but we're gonna power through. And wanted to toss it back to you, Neil. Any from Sunday's victory against Carolina, was there anything from a numbers perspective or just any nugget that you wanted to jump back in and talk about that you might have missed or that we might have just not talked about on Sunday?
Um, I I I think the resounding impression that I got from a lot of people, more on the negative Nelly side of things, was the level of quality of the Panthers. They're an NFL team. Okay, if the 5-8 Panthers are that much worse than the 5-8 Steelers, then the Steelers should do what they did to them. So they accomplished their goal. I can tell you several instances, about 8 of them so far this year, in which the Steelers failed to accomplish their goal. So if if we're coming down on them that much, a team that started 2-6, that was utterly brutal in many cases, if we are that upset with them going out and executing, I'd say 90% in dominance over an NFL team, I don't know what your guys' standard is, but the reality is you're not measuring this reasonably, and you don't know what you're looking at. This team was a dumpster fire from training camp through about week 8. They were really not a good team. The fact that they are coming back now to be competitive, at least in most of the games that they're playing, they're winning more than they're losing. That kind of turnaround with this roster from where they started, it's a pretty admirable job. Now, I understand full well, Lance, and people are going to freak out about this because they have to have, for the sake of their self-esteem, the Steelers be a Super Bowl level team. I feel watching the Panthers game, and this is not a majority opinion, it does me good because I feel like I can be proud of this team. I can watch this and say, you know what? I know where they were. I see where they are now. The level of effort that they've put into fixing the gaping holes that they had is respectable. They're not a dominant team by any stretch. I don't think they'll win this weekend. I didn't pick them to win last weekend. They're not a good football team. I expected them to finish below 500. I don't care about Tomlin's streak, except for I'd like it to continue because 1, I like to see my team win. 2, I like to see my team win. 3, it's fun to shut people up. As long as that streak was there, it was fun to throw into the naysayers that think they know what they're talking about. We won't have that anymore. And there are a lot of reasons for it. There are a lot of things that they need to fix. I'm not giving a pass, but at the very least, I feel like at the 10,000 foot level, the Panthers game showed what what they were trying to build and what they got to. Now that might anger some in social media that want to take everything I say completely out of context. What I mean by that is they wanted to have a dominant running team. They wanted to be able to win games in the trenches, and they wanted to be able to suffocate an opposing run game and try to eliminate the big plays on defense. I feel like all those boxes were checked, and that's what I mean when I say this is the team they were trying to build. That is not a comment on the roster itself. They wanted to play football like they did against the Panthers and be able to win in that fashion, and they did. There's ample evidence to back that up. If we need to immediately go into what Kevin Colbert did, who's not a part of this team, if we need to get into that, we're completely off the mark, and you need to do something else with your life. To be honest, you have to find a little bit more objectivity, some more reasonability. Find something else to do with your time if you were that upset and that outraged over something you clearly don't understand. That doesn't all come from the Patriots game or the Panthers game, I guess, Lance. But this time of the year, I like to see the Steelers playing competitive football. It's not going to extend into January. We know that. Mike Tomlin is not going to give up, at the very least, until they are mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. They're spiritually eliminated. I don't think there's any way in the world they're going to the playoffs. But at the very least, they're playing like they have a chance. In some instances, I'm okay with that, because go watch the Houston Texans play sometime, consistently week in and week out. I don't know how those guys muster the strength to go out and play outside of their paychecks. It's really hard to get them rowing in the right direction when they're as bad, as dismal, and bleak as they are. The Steelers don't quit. They could have given up, folded the tents, and left a long time ago. They're fighting. They're going to finish the year much better than where they started. I'm not satisfied with that overall, but I will applaud the effort at the very least. I feel like that's what we saw against Carolina. It wasn't perfect. I'm not going to suggest at all that it was. I'm also not saying that Carolina used to be undefeated before they played the mighty Steelers, who are now in pole position to win the Super Bowl. Simply not the case. I know that. We can find other things to appreciate within this game. We don't need to be as ruthless about it as many are. I think, though, when you do that, you're going to find a lot more enjoyment. You're going to see more clearly what they're trying to do, and that makes it really more of an enjoyable experience. I don't know about you, Lance, but my self-identity is not attached to the Steelers. I'm not on the team. I don't have membership in the team. It is a part of my culture. It is a part of my family. That doesn't mean they are not ever going to not compete for a Super Bowl. I've been as harsh on this team as anybody has. They're not particularly good. Their roster is not particularly good. They've got a lot more work that they need to do. But I see the direction that they're going in, and there is some reason for optimism. Again, long off season, a lot of work they need to do, a lot of tough questions they need to get answered. But last week was a pretty solid performance, all things considered. And if you're not okay with that, fine. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting when you were saying it, that if you don't like wins, then the standard is definitely not the standard for you. It's just the win. I mean, it's a win. You win, you win, and you correct. That's why I never complain about winning, and that's why I probably understand the phrase. Um, when Tomlin would say style points don't matter, just because of the difficulty in winning in the National Football League consistently. Success begets success. And that's why the Steelers are going to continue to fight every week to try to win games. You don't learn how to win by losing games.
Truth.
You learn how to win games by winning games. You got to play, you got to compete. And again, we're talking about, these are guys' dreams. This is what puts food on the table. This is what these guys have been working to do their entire lives. Players, coaches, front office guys, they're not going to give up games, and they should not. And I love that, and I hate tanking, but I like sexy tanking. When they respect my dollar, they respect the hard work that I put to giving my money to them to consume the product, and so I appreciate when teams continue to play. Here's an interesting number that jumped out to me from the game, and it might go to. And I want to get your perspective on this. Whether this was game plan, was this just a factor of who was playing, how they wanted to play that day, whatever. Uh, did you realize that in this game, Fryermuth had no targets?
I'm glad you brought that up. To be honest with you, I was not aware it was 0 targets, but it really kind of seemed like he was on something of a pitch count. That phrase came up a bit during the game. He's had concussion issues as well. I don't think they intended him to have a full complement of snaps. That very well could have been, we're going to put him in running situations, have him block more so than put him down the field where he can take another shot to the head. Not to suggest that blocking is somehow safer, but it seemed like they had a very specific, shorter game plan for him than they usually do. To not give him a target, he was, I believe, top 5 in the NFL among tight ends in targets. It was a little bit different, but they didn't throw the ball a whole lot this game. They wanted to run, they wanted to dominate on the ground up front, and they were largely successful in those efforts. Certainly situationally they were. They didn't need him to get a bunch of targets. We saw Zach Gentry out there, he got a few. I don't think Hayward did, to my memory.
No, he didn't. I think Gentry only got 1 target in the game.
Okay. Well, then it was a game where they didn't they wanted to play 12. I pretty sure they did that. I don't have that in front of me. And use extra blockers to try to widen out the run game a little bit. And I think to a reasonable degree they were successful with that. They ran successfully. Situationally they were strong. Made the plays that they needed to. Dominated time of possession. I think that was more of their plan, not to throw the ball around the field. Now, there's going to be a time and place for a lot of different styles of football. I feel like their plan in this one was to attack A gap, B gap, try to run more the inside and outside zone that they've been doing, and they had success with it. More of the question, though, is Freiermuth's long-term health. Is he okay? What are they going to do with him this weekend? A little bit shorter of a week game. It'll be interesting to see. You hope he's okay. They cleared. We'll get into this as well, but they cleared Kenny Pickett with the same thing. Maybe that suggests they're going to try to do the same thing that they did last week. Maybe that suggests fewer targets for Freiermuth. I don't know. Up in the air against a very interesting opponent, but it was definitely unique in terms of game plan. To see Freiermuth not get the ball to the level that he did not in this game.
And looking at the game book, both tight ends, Gentry played 42 snaps of 68 offensive snaps, and Freiermuth played 38 of 68 offensive snaps. So it was a weird usage, and I never thought I'd see a game in where Boykin would get a catch, but Freiermuth would not, or even get a target. I mean, even Gunner got a catch, and so did Zach Gentry, and Steven Sims even got 2 targets in the game. So it was I wanted to point that out because I thought he had got a target. I knew that he played, but I didn't know. I was surprised to see that he didn't get any targets. And again, they only threw the ball 21 times in the game, and of those 21 pass attempts, Deontay Johnson was targeted 10 times. So I thought that was a weird anomaly that we should talk about that happened with this particular game. And I'm glad that you mentioned Kenny Pickett, because the other big news, unfortunately, or fortunately for the Steelers, is that Kenny Pickett has he officially been cleared from the concussion protocol?
It's funny that you ask that.
Yeah.
I listened to Tomlin's press conference. I don't feel like they did clear him yet. And I feel like everybody heard something optimistic, and then all of a sudden the story became he's cleared into he will start. I don't think we heard that necessarily. The fact that he was listed he was not listed on the team's hypothetical injury report, which is what they do ahead of an earlier game, Thursday or Saturday. The Steelers are going to play Saturday night. So they would list injuries that the team is aware of that would affect their practice participation for that day if they had practiced. They didn't. Pickett was said he would not have been on the report. That would indicate that he is cleared from concussion protocol. I did not feel we heard that from Tomlin. I didn't listen to it a second time, but the impression I got wasn't that he was starting. He was not emphatic about that point, if that is in case what's going to happen. It seems like that's where they're going. I feel like they're going to kind of take a look and make sure. Tomlin also likes to game these things a little bit. There's some showmanship involved. he's not going to go out of his way to fully, make 100% certain the Raiders are aware of who they're going to start a quarterback just yet because he doesn't have to. So I would expect Pickett to start. I don't feel like there was any type of formal declaration of that. Not that there has to be on a Tuesday, but that's I that's my take of it. That could be different. It doesn't seem like anybody is really wavering with the idea that that he won't start, but we'll see what happens. They're not going to officially declare anything. I mean, they don't do that with a guy that's going to start. He's just not going to be listed as out. That's what they'll do. And in which case, if he is healthy, he'll play. We know that.
Listeners, make sure you please like and subscribe to the program. If you're listening, please give us a like and subscribe. We're almost close to being monetized, so please push us over the top. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that because I didn't get the sense that he was fully cleared, but I did get the sense that they were going to start him. Or every report that I saw, it was kind of like it's 1 foot in, sort of like putting your big toe into the cold water. I mean, so I expect that we probably will see Kenny Pickett on Saturday. But the question is, another thing is, and I'll answer it first, and I want to get your perspective is, should we see Kenny Pickett on Saturday? And I think that's the question as well. And I'll answer it this way, that there's a lot of things that I've seen on social media about Kenny Pickett's health, about the concussions, that the season is lost, that there's no reason to play Kenny Pickett. You should preserve his health, get him healthy, so on and so forth for next year. Look, unfortunately, and I can say this, and I don't want it to sound like I'm being insensitive and flippant with someone's health, but I will say this: playing football, unfortunately, involves getting hit in the head. That is a part of the job description. Part of the job description of being a starting quarterback is getting hit in your head, possibly. And part of being a starting quarterback in the league is figuring out how to protect yourself. And so, if anything, playing these games will, if the coaching staff says he should start, give them the best opportunity to win. And he has to learn how to protect himself. He has to learn how to make business decisions, when to quit on plays, when to throw the ball out of bounds, when to live to see another down. That's part of the development of him being a quarterback. So when it comes to these type of situations, I mean, people rip me all the time. They're like, "You're so hard-hearted. You're not playing. It's not your health." I'm just like, look, man, they play football. Getting hurt and getting hit in the head and getting concussions, unfortunately, is a part of it. And I trust that the team will do what's in the best interest of, and that might be naive, of themselves first and the player. And that decision is made mutually by both parties. I mean, Kenny Pickett, if he doesn't feel as if he's healthy, he won't go out there. I know that players oftentimes play hurt and they do certain things, and they do certain things, and they play when they're not actually healthy. But I don't have an issue at all with Kenny Pickett starting the game. It's a big spot. It's a big moment. It's a great. Every game is a great development. Something for his development. So I don't have an issue with it. If the staff thinks he's ready to go, if the player thinks he's ready to go, then you play the guy.
It's really what it comes down to. You hate to say this, but they're getting paid a lot of money with the potential of making more money. The one guy who's going to want to be on the field is Kenny Pickett. So the job, in my opinion, the responsibility of the team is to protect him from himself. What that means is you don't put him out there if he can't protect himself. Getting hit in the head, yes, it's an inherent part of football. I would offer this up, though, as insensitive as it might sound. The hit that he took from Roquan Smith isn't a common one. Not dirty. It's not illegal. He's getting him to the ground. Nothing wrong with what he did at all. But that isn't going to happen all that often. there is an inherent risk that you cannot avoid and you're not going to avoid. Resting him does not prevent the same thing from happening a year, 2 years, 6 years down the line in either the preseason or the Super Bowl. We don't know what's going to happen. When Mike Tomlin says things like, we don't live in our fears, that's what he means. We don't know what's going to happen. You can't plan for injury. You just can't. It's not feasible in a process sense. Now, people all think, well, just get a good backup. Your backup's not a starter. Logically, it's invalid. There is no backup that's your starter. You can't have both. You can pay to have a backup who can do certain things to help the team, but he's not your starting quarterback, and there's a reason he's not your starting quarterback. Protecting Kenny Pickett now, as in don't play him, does not guarantee anything for the future. It's a fluke, one-time injury. It is not accumulation of hits. It's not a boxer. It's not the way that it works. He could play in the game and never get touched. Fully possible that happens. More of the risk in not playing him is him not getting what he really needs. Game reps, situation reps, that learned knowledge, those throws, the looks against defense, more time with his teammates. Those things develop you into a great player. And I might argue, this isn't entirely fair, but I might argue that without those things, you're not going to want him to play, whether he's injured or not, because he's not going to be good enough. You have to take a risk at some point. They drafted him to play, not to not play. I mean, it just the whole thing, I understand the humanity part of it, but this is a savage game for savage people. If we need to try to put up passive resistance to everything, we really shouldn't watch any of it. But we do, because we love it. They play it because they get highly paid, and to some degree, they enjoy it. The money is certainly right for them. That's why they get paid as much as they do. Pickett is out there trying to earn a contract. He's trying to win the respect of his teammates. He's trying to lead them, and he's trying to win games. If he does that, he's going to get paid a lot of money. He is okay with that risk. I mean, everything suggests he's okay with that risk. If he is able to play, if he is ready to play, in other words, if he can defend himself, he should be out there. And I'm certain that's the Steelers' determination as well. And the Steelers, as well as the Steelers as a franchise and the connections they have to UPMC, have been at the forefront of the real concussion issue that has plagued the NFL for the first 70 years of its existence, however long it is. I'm not letting them off the hook for anything that they did, but they are understanding of the fact that they are under the microscope when it comes to how they deal with these things. They're going to make the decision based on not just what is in the best interest of the player, but the best interest of the team, because the player wants to play. He wants to focus on that. If everything that we know says he can play, he can defend himself, he should be out there. If the team needs him to play, he should play. That's the game, Lance. That's life. I mean, people don't like it, but we really can't tell a whole lot of people what to do. The level of control we think we have over our fellow man is incredible to me.
And in a game where one of the big matchups, when you're taking a look at this Steeler offense against this Raider defense, Steeler offense number 18 in DVOA against the Raider defense that's 32nd in defensive DVOA. One of the big matchups that stand out is the matchup of Chucks versus Crosby. Chucks right now is rated number 18 true pass sets in terms of pass pro by PFF, and Crosby is ranked ninth, I should say, in terms of edge players. I think they have him listed as a edge player. No, they don't have him. I think they have him as a defensive. He's a defensive. I think they have him as a DI or something. I forget what designation they have.
That tends to mean interior lineman.
Yeah, but it's weird because he's not a stand-up guy. His designation is weird, but be it as it may, Max Crosby is a very effective pass rusher wide nine guy, high motor guy, a guy that's going to really get after it uh, every snap and give his full 100% on every snap. A very tough player to handle. What's your thoughts on that matchup, Neil, from a
We
pass protection standpoint?
we saw him last year and he tore it up. Max Crosby's a hell of a player, great football player. Um, and yeah, not to get in too deeply to the obvious stereotypes, but yeah, he's a high motor guy. He plays with a lot of energy. He comes every play. You have to love how he approaches the game. You have to love how he plays the game, and he's dominant. He had a big game against them last year when they beat him in I think it was week 2 last season. Um, that's a tough matchup for Chucks. It's a tough matchup for anybody. I mean, he's borderline borderline all pro level player. He can have that kind of impact on a game. So it's mission critical for the Steelers to find ways to stop him, and I think that's going to be essential as far as packaging goes for the Steelers. What they're calling, how they're doing, what they're doing. Um, a lot of teams will run screens off of high energy, high impact edge rushers like him. Steelers don't screen a whole lot, not planned anyway. They outlet pass, but I think while Chooks is certainly going to be a primary guy in that effort, I think it's a big game for the tight ends as well as the running backs.
Yeah, I was
I
going to
like
ask you that. You see a lot of 12 in this game?
I do. I do because I think this is the way they want to play. I think this is what they've wanted to do. It's just taken them a bit to get the depth to feel comfortable in doing it. Farmuth has been banged up a little bit as well. I think that might have slowed some of the progress. Hayward is kind of the key to that. Gentry is a good player. I nothing against you. I like what Gentry has developed himself into. He's a guy I'd be curious if they might try to get back on a 1 or 2 year deal in his own right. But Hayward is coming along quite a bit as a receiver. That helps. You can't run 12 personnel if you're using a tight end that absolutely will not go out for pass routes. You're showing exactly what you're doing if that's the case. It's taken Hayward a bit to kind of develop and catch up. Not unusual for a rookie to be playing much better in the second half of the year than in the first. With that in mind, they have 3 tight ends that they can use in a multitude of ways. If we want to call that 12, if we want to call it, you could run an offset eye. Hayward can come in as a fullback and shift, or shift to the line or offline. They're more versatile with a player like that. This is really what they wanted when they drafted him. So I think they can do that in this game. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm curious how much they did it in the last game and how much that was the result of Freiermuth's condition as opposed to a tactical advantage. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if they want to get after Vegas here on the ground and try to limit really what should have been a pretty explosive big play offense. They haven't been able to click all season either, very similar to the Steelers offense. But it's still dangerous. Devontae Adams is still among the most talented receivers in the game. So defensively, you probably want to, or offensively, you probably want to control the clock a little bit so you don't have to put your defense into a bunch of adverse situations against big time playmakers like they have on that team.
And when you look at Crosby, he is indeed on PFF listed as an edge. He is the
Yeah,
number 4.
I don't
He's
know
the
why
number,
they would
yeah,
list him otherwise.
yeah. He's the number 4 rated edge behind Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, and Brandon Graham. He, in fact, I think he was like number 2 last year.
Yeah.
That's overall defensive grade, and in terms of
half
pass rush,
half of that was from his game against the Steelers.
and
He
and
tore
and
us up.
and in terms of pass rush, he's a little bit lower. Myles Garrett is still number 1 in pass rush rating. Um, he had a little bit of a better year last year. As a team overall, in terms of adjusted sack rate, the Steelers are ranked 13th and the Raiders are ranked 30th. And, and looking at the Raider game last week against the Patriots, a lot of chips, a lot of slide protection to his way. He was getting blocked by multiple people. I would suspect that the Steelers will probably go at it that way, try to block him with the tight end, chip him with a back, pay a lot of attention to Crosby and feel as if they can hold up with the other pass rushers. Now, you talked about the running game. Steelers are 13th in DVOA in terms of the run. The Raiders are 22nd in DVOA. Najee Harris is rated 22nd overall by backs and 28th in DVOA. What do you think about the matchup between the Steelers running game against that Raiders run defense?
The Steelers running game, from what we saw, functionally, the way that they conducted business against Carolina, I know it's Carolina. The way they executed, though, it has to give you faith that they're capable of running to a high level. That's just simply not something we've said all that often, certainly over the last 2 years. I think they can win that game up front. I think they are capable of doing that. It's just Crosby is a disruptor. He's a difference maker. That's going to be an issue. Can they get guys in front of him? How many are they going to need to slow him down? And from there, the other guys not involved with that assignment, are they able to win their specific assignments? And how much of that, how much versatility can they add to all of that? That's the question that I would have. I think the Steelers can do it. Are they going to run for 200 yards? No, probably not. I don't think they're that good. It's tough. I think in a large part, I think that the game is going to come down to that, though. Pittsburgh's offense versus Vegas's defense, and who can win the battle of attrition overall, and what's going to be a very cold, blustery night in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and if you're a Steeler fan, and I assume you are if you're listening to this show, you got to be optimistic with the performance of the Patriots on the ground last week against the Raiders. They ran it 32 times for 206 yards. Ramondre Stevenson had 19 attempts for 172, averaged 9.1, had a very good game before he decided to lateral. I don't know, has that play gotten a name yet? It must have a name. That play was one of the dumbest plays.
I think it's funny to me. Everyone wants to rush to give it a name. I think that in and of itself makes it something it doesn't need a name. Everybody recognizes it. Everybody knows it. The Immaculate Reception was something that was not caught by the initial TV camera angles. Live, you didn't see it. The game was blacked out locally. You ask anybody around that age in Pittsburgh, there was 3.5 million people at that game, but the reality is there's only 50,000, and a lot of them had left. So few people saw it. Therefore, it kind of needs a nickname to proliferate. The Stevenson, I think you can just call it the lateral, and everyone's going to know what you're talking about. But as far as the significance of it goes, everybody knows what it is. Everybody is going to immediately equate it as what not to do in the NFL.
That dumb stuff.
It's just to segue on that very quickly. It's funny to me that everybody wants to work as hard as they seem to be to talk about how stupid it was for them to do it. It's like, yeah, absolutely. And then why doesn't Belichick just take a knee? Like, well, he gave the trust to his player to do the right thing. And there's still, how much time was left? Like 12 seconds, something like that?
2 seconds.
If they don't, was it 2 really?
Yeah, it
okay.
Was like,
if he doesn't trust his quarterback to throw 55 yards in the element, yeah, okay, I can get it. I'm sure Mac Jones is going to disagree, but I understand what he's saying with that. Get the ball to a good running back that can make some moves. And when you're facing 10 defensive backs like you are, maybe it's possible he can make a move. Maybe it's possible he can break a tackle and make something happen. Defensive penalty. They get a long field goal to try to win the game on an untimed down. It's better than taking a knee, because the reality is what happened absolutely should not have happened in any circumstance. You don't lateral if you don't have that set up. You know what it makes me think of? I don't know who else remembers this. Please tell me if you do. Antoine Randall L. lateraled. I think this was 2005.
I was at the game.
Were you at that? Oh my
Yes.
God, was that stupid?
Yes.
The whole momentum of the game swung on that.
They were going to win the game. And
it's like, Twan, buddy, you're not a point guard. Okay. They're not expecting you to throw them the ball when you're down the field. And of course, Patriots recover. They go on to win the game. You can't just do things like that. And then from there to try to throw it 30 yards to your quarterback, who's going to do what with it? He's the least athletic quarterback under the age of 30 in the NFL.
Get mushed.
we don't need to get into just how
Yeah, yeah,
incredibly stupid it was, but it doesn't need a name because of that. If it has a name, it's just going to be the lateral because
yeah,
it's all it needs. It's not.
yeah.
It's just an example of pure stupidity. I feel really bad for the players involved because they're trying to make a play. Um,
They should call it.
just an unfortunate mistake in
They should
many
call it
ways.
the
But
mush.
my God, was that funny?
They just call it the mush because he got mushed. But I think the compelling matchup in this game, although we know the Steelers are going to try to run the football, is you have a team in the Raiders that are ranked 31st in DVOA against stopping the pass. And, you look at some of their DVOA numbers against wide receivers. Number one wide receivers, 19. Number two receivers, 8. Other receivers, 32nd. And tight ends, 19. Overall, 31st. That is some opportunity for the Steelers to make some hay offensively in the passing game, particularly if they can get Crosby blocked. Because one thing I noticed in watching the Raiders, they play a lot of cover one. They play a lot of man coverage. And I'm thinking, we were talking a lot about Deontay Johnson last game. I think in a game like this, if you play a lot of one-on-one coverage against Deontay and George Pickens, if you can protect, there's going to be some opportunities downfield for the Steelers to make some hay. And I really think that this could be a game where you see Deontay Johnson break the seal, so to speak, and get a touchdown. What do you think about the
Wouldn't that be
matchup
something?
between Steelers passing game and the Raiders passing defense?
I agree with everything that you're saying. My issue is weather's going to be very not passing like.
Yes.
And here's the thing with that: when it gets really cold, and I'm an expert of this, living where I live, it's I believe 8 below right now. There was somebody, by the way, that said I should shoot the first part of the show outside. I was actually kind of thinking before the unfortunate news we found out this morning, I was going to do the show outside until I couldn't do it anymore and see how long it would have lasted.
30 seconds.
I was going to set the over under at 12 minutes tops. Probably wasn't going to make it more than 12 minutes. But the weather conditions in Pittsburgh, it's supposed to be cold. The high that day is going to be like 8. This game's kicking off at 8:30 Eastern. So you're talking, call it 0. I mean, it may as well be 0. It doesn't matter what the wind chill is. You don't have a great ability to grip the ball. That's going to be much harder to handle, harder to throw.
Hands.
And yes, the whole small hands thing is going to come up.
Hands.
It's not conducive to a great passing attack. So that doesn't necessarily mean you stick on the ground. It just means that you're not going to take a whole lot of deep shots, I don't think. At the same time, though, keep in mind, they're not playing at Lambeau Field in 1963, okay? There are heating coils under the field. It doesn't make the field, balmy and warm. It makes it unfrozen. So there is a certain level of heat that's going to come off the ground. It'll be warmer on the turf than it will be in the stands. So it's not completely impossible. It's just not going to be the easiest thing in the world for really any quarterback to do. Some elements bother some QBs differently than others. Just knowing the Steelers makeup, though, a team that hasn't really tried a whole lot of deep stuff all year, there's really no evidence to think they're going to try more of that. But I do agree with the idea that you really can't defend Deontay Johnson in single coverage. It's a question of seeing where he is. It's a question of we're assuming Pickett, but either Trubisky as well, recognizing that that's where he is and getting him the ball. Like we talked about last week too, though, Lance, from there, that's been the challenge for Johnson up to this point. We looked up these numbers. Last year, the end of the season, Deontay Johnson was 8th in the NFL with like 582 yards after the catch. This year, he's 87th in the NFL with like 132 or something like that. If you watch him after he catches the ball, and usually he's catching it with his face forward to the line. He's running curls, slants, things like that. He is taking steps back. I know he might lose a yard doing that kind of thing, but he's trying to get free to be able to make a play. When he catches the ball, watch the defenders. One, they're all being told quite clearly, rally to the ball when he gets it, because he's a game breaker after the catch. And from there, the initial guy is playing an angle. He's not running at him right away. They're letting him kind of waste movement, waste a little bit of time, going back farther to get his shoulders square to try to get up the field. And that in turn gives the ralliers the opportunity to get to him and cut off any escape lane that he might have. They've really taken away his yards after catch. Now, there's work that he has to do as a receiver, and schematically, they've got to find a way to put him in a better spot to make plays after the catch. But that's what's killing them more than anything. Either way, though, you're not going to ignore Deontay Johnson just because you think you can stop him after the catch. You know, and him not getting the ball is really what you want to slow down their passing attack. That would be a huge. If they were only able to get Johnson the ball 4 times, their passing game, the Steelers' passing game, either was completely neutered that day, or George Pickens had 250 yards on 12 targets.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's going to happen either. That'd be a fun game to watch, I'm sure. But Johnson not getting the ball means the passing game isn't working far more often than it means somebody else is lighting it up. So they need to find ways to do more against not the greatest pass defense you've ever seen, but a good pass rush. They got to find a way to get Johnson the ball in space and give him a good opportunity to make plays after the catch. That's really why he doesn't have any touchdowns. He's not able to break anything.
Yeah.
With that, they don't have chunk plays. They don't have chunk plays. They're not in the red zone throwing the ball all that well. There are a lot of things, but make no mistake, it is historically weird for him to have gotten the ball as often as he has and not scored a touchdown. It's never happened. It never happened. Nobody in the history of the game has gotten as many targets as Johnson has, 122, I think it is, without scoring a touchdown. It's really, really strange.
Yeah, and to your point, it's Football Outsiders has a great metric, yards above replacement. And at this point in the season, I think his is a minus 87, which means he's minus 87 underneath the replacement. So a replacement, he has 87 less yards statistically than a replacement player.
It's just weird.
And which
It's
is
really
absolutely
weird.
brutal.
But it's brutal, but it's not as damning an individual stat as you think that it would be, because it's not like he's bad. Deontay Johnson is a really good receiver. It's players doing what he's doing don't have. He's a small, slippery, balanced, excellent route running, stationary object. Okay, that doesn't happen in the NFL. Guys that can do the things he does break plays eventually. He just hasn't, and I almost feel like there's a regression to the mean that's coming here. He's going to bust one soon, and he's going to continue to do that for the rest of the year just to get back kind of to where historically, statistically, he should be.
When you flip the ball, it's sort of average versus average. Steelers defense 13 in DVOA, yep. Raiders offense 16 in DVOA, both middle of the pack. The Steelers we see,
they're improving.
Yeah, they're improving. You can see with the Steelers, if they play to their ceiling, they can shut down teams and play very well. One of the big issues, in my opinion, is the lack of defensive line depth, and a lot of that, and TJ Watt's injury. And I think this pits a nice matchup between Highsmith and Colton Miller, and Watt versus, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to get the pronunciation right, Elemanor?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. And that's the matchup I think to look at. You're talking about Colton Miller, who's playing very good football, and TJ Watt, I thought showed some flashes in the Carolina Panther game. What's your thoughts on the pressure aspect here? You think Steelers be able to get good pressure on Derek Carr in this game?
It's really all going to come down once again to Watt. He's the superstar. I agree with you. I think we saw some kind of Wattian-like plays last week. A few of them, not a ton. We're not getting the 4-quarter all-out assault from him the way we have in the past. And he's hurt. You can tell that he's not playing at 100%, but he's getting better. If he is at the top of his game, if he is able to command the kind of attention that he normally does, others can eat. And we've seen good things out of Alex Highsmith. I think the Steelers could use a big game from him. I like their chances in this one in that regard, except I don't think we're going to see a ton of passing. There's not going to be a ton of opportunity for pressure, which is to say Carr's going to get the ball, drop 3 steps, and release. He's good at that. Quick release guy. He can throw short. They're figuring things out in Las Vegas. As somebody that I'm guilty of this. Had high expectations for Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas. I'm eating plenty of crow. It just simply has not worked out for them all year. They have a litany of problems on both sides of the ball, but definitely on the offense in Las Vegas. But I still feel like they're going to break out eventually, and this is the kind of team they can do that against if they're able to get Adams deeper to make plays down the field. I don't know if this is the right game for them to do that. They're going to have to largely pitch a shutout against TJ Watt. So for me, Watt is the guy that's got to open all that up. I think they're capable of it. We'll see. Weather doesn't affect a guy like Watt. You know, the internal things, physical things affect him more than anything else around him. If it comes to him at his best, he could play on the sun and dominate. You know, it's not an issue of the opponent. It's not an issue of a scheme. It's just about his physical health. We'll see where he is.
He'd be red. He'd be red hot.
I feel there you go. There you go. If he is if he continues to improve the way that he has, I think Vegas will have a tough time moving the ball. But I would imagine they're going to want to run quite a bit against this defense. That's what I would do.
And speaking of the running game, you're talking about Josh Jacobs, currently rated number 9 in DVOA and the number 1 rated running back on PFF. He's running very well. Excellent back. He's probably the best Alabama back that's come out in the last decade.
He's from Alabama. He's from Stanford, isn't he?
No, he's from Alabama. Him and Derrick Henry.
Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, he's from Alabama. He was there before Najee. He was the starter. I think it was him, Najee Harris, and
who's the one from Stanford? What the hell am I thinking of?
Good back. I don't know back.
Why am I still talking?
Oh, you're thinking of McCaffrey. You're thinking of McCaffrey.
I'm thinking of McCaffrey.
That's the only
Josh
good
Jacobs
back.
and McCaffrey are not. They're not the same.
Not the same. Ebony and Ivory living in perfect harmony. Ebony, Ivory, one of the worst songs. By the way,
that song is terrible. By the way, why is that even popular? I've never understood. It's just
because it was Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson.
God, what are you doing?
He could do no wrong at that point in time.
Yeah, I suppose there's that.
You know, he was definitely the king of pop. One shiny glove, but
Michael didn't need it. I don't know what Sir Paul did much of his solo career. His Christmas song, by the way, is the worst fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Nice mixing of an F-bomb, Christmas songs, and pop. That was
Christmas season. I don't know about you guys. I'm swearing every third word.
You know, it was very nihilist. The running game. We've seen the Steelers play very well in the running game last week. Probably the best we've seen them play all year in the running game. They held Carolina to 21 yards on 16 attempts. I mean, they absolutely stuffed that running game. They're going to have, in my opinion, a similar, not a similar effort, but a very good effort in the elements against a team that's going to lean heavy on the running game. Look into your crystal ball, Neil Stradamus, and give me Josh Jacobs' stat line for this game.
This, I honestly, I think this is going to be a really basic game. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of, as people would call it, chess-like strategy involved.
No,
this is going to be this is going to be about the Raiders' ability to get Jacobs going against the Steelers' front seven, which has been challenged in that regard a bit over the last 5 games. Nice improvement last week. Still got some work that they need to do. And the Steelers' ability, conversely, to get Najee going against Oakland's front, which you can make the same argument. So I think it comes down to Najee versus Jacobs. And for me, it's probably Jacobs. It's probably top to bottom. I think that the Raiders have a better ability to establish and succeed on the ground than the Steelers do. And I think the game will go accordingly. One thing I would point out, though, is, knock on wood, Najee Harris doesn't put the ball on the ground very much. I think he's done that, once, maybe twice in his career.
Yeah.
And I believe it was on a pass too. So technically, we can get away with saying he's never fumbled while carrying the ball from the backfield. So that's thin. Never mind. Skip that. We'll edit that part out later, right? Um, I think top to bottom, Jacobs is a tougher assignment. He's a tougher responsibility, but I think Pittsburgh is up to that task in a better way than Vegas is going to be in this game. Plus, I hate to say this, but the emotional element of this game just went through the roof, and it was already pretty stacked in Pittsburgh's favor. So I feel like Pittsburgh's just going to pull this one out, just because of the emotion, the environment that we're going to see it in. We're going to see them rise above quite a bit from what we have normally seen them recently playing. I think this is a better level for them, and yeah, I think it's the rah stuff. I know that players are going to say we don't really listen to that. This is different. Okay, we also know whenever the Steelers honored a player in the past, they did something with throwback uniforms, which they're going to wear in this game. Whenever they did that at home, it brought the crowd out, and the crowd got something more out of the team than what we had seen to that point. They've kicked the holy hell out of some teams that they probably even shouldn't have beaten in these kinds of premium marquee games. So while everything in my being says Vegas is going to win, I think the Steelers are going to play above their A game in this. This is a great day. Great, easy story for the lazy journalist. Easy story for Najee Harris to run for like 132 yards in this one, 2 touchdowns, and the Steelers win. Wouldn't
Yeah.
we love that?
Yeah. Yeah. And both guys are. Is that your prediction? Did you just that? Is that you want?
I'm not predicting Najee at 132 yards. I just like the symmetry of it. I'm going back and forth on this. The more we talk about it, you've swung me.
I mean, hey,
Some of
I
the
mean,
info that you've given me is kind of swung me a little bit. So
it's very poetic. Harris, the passing of the torches, Franco Harris to Najee Harris, the Harris train. You can see all this. Someone more clever than me coming up with a great headline if it all comes to fruition. But one thing with the Steelers, before we get to our predictions, they better do a little bit better job in terms of pass defense. Last time, Derek Carr ripped them up 28 for 37,
second half he
382.
was on. Second
And
half he was unstoppable.
and
I don't think he threw an incomplete pass in the second half. Just torched
yeah,
them. But that
he had a
team sucked.
rating.
At that point of the year,
Yeah,
they were terrible.
yeah, 126.2 rating, 10.3 yards per attempt. Ironically, and going back and watching that game, Ruggs was in that game, and I almost
Yep.
forgot all about Ruggs as a
Yep.
player. I mean,
Had a
who
big
knows what's
play.
going to happen to him? Yeah, he had a big play in that game.
Pretty
I'm
pretty
assuming
sure we're not
he
going to see him
probably,
again.
yeah, he never plays football again. And again, of course, when you're talking about the Raiders, it's the matchup against Devontae Adams. I thought the Patriots did a pretty good job of him against him doing their typical double him and put your top corner on the number 2 guy. And I thought the Steelers, even in the matchup last year, did a good job against Waller. I thought they did a pretty good job of holding Waller down. The Raiders have some explosive weapons with Renfro, Waller, and Adams. But I think what you're saying uh, with the weather is going to really impact their ability to utilize all those dimensions in their offense. And I think it's really going to wind down to a game of each running game against each running game. And it's going to be Jacobs versus Harris, Alabama versus Alabama. And in this one, given the emotion of the game, the passing of Franco, the immaculate reception celebration, I'm going with the Steelers to win a very tough game in the elements, 20-17.
I like it. I like it. I don't mind that number. I feel like Waller is going to be critical to Jacob's success, and I don't know. This is tough. Vegas should win. I just feel like it's one of those games the Steelers pull out late in the year that they probably shouldn't. Um, I'm going to say Steelers 24, Raiders 20.
Nice, nice. I think we're gonna see something special on Christmas Eve. I don't know if it'll be as special as Antonio Brown, him scoring on essentially the last play of the game. Uh, Again, in that particular game, that was on Christmas. That was actually on Christmas Day, correct?
Yes, yes, it was. It was
And
the
so I think
immaculate
I think we
extension.
yes, the immaculate. I I was thinking of a bunch of things when you said of Antonio Brown, a few that I won't say on air pause. But with that, we are going to conclude the show. And again, we dedicate this program to the memory of Franco Harris, to his family, to the city of Pittsburgh, to the NFL, to Steeler Nation, and to everybody out there that's mourning the loss of Franco Harris. With that, we're going to conclude the show. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. R.I.P. Franco.